it was just that notion of diversity that was the last piece to the puzzle, was actually bringing in, I mean, I had a lot of I guess like healthy salad and vegetable food with my meats when I was eating it, but I was probably only eating the 5 different types of veggies, whatever I grabbed. I'd just keep on eating them through the week rather than having this, like, nice big garden of things in my fridge to essentially kind of like help replant the gut garden, So yeah, it was all about diversity, eating as many different live, fresh plants as possible, and really, I wouldn't say. I mean, I train, I'm active. I would say that protein now is a fairly inconsequential focus of my diet, which a lot of people feel they're really confused by, because sometimes I can, in the environments that I've been working in, people will say to me, like, what do you do? How do you stay so strong? Like, you're muscly, right? And the question is always about protein.
Yeah.
But there's no fiber in protein. And getting to the fiber thing, that it makes me it just makes me kick myself for all those years that I struggled so hard with this problem. At university, first, second, third year, all of those years that I was studying nutrition, they were saying the same thing back then.
I know.
Eat fiber,
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I am Nicolette Richer, your host. And if you have never listened to this podcast before, if this is the first episode that you are listening to, I encourage you to go back to the 100+ podcasts, choose any one of them, and you will be able to hear from some of the best researchers, scientists, doctors in the world, all about plant-based nutrition. Now, you can also listen to the episodes of my previous clients that have used food as medicine to reverse their advanced chronic diseases. And listen to these episodes because you will learn everything about the decisions they made to go down this path, how they were able to say no finally to all the prescription medications, to upcoming surgeries. Definitely go back to Frances' podcast. She had full-blown endometriosis. Surgery and drugs were not working. Her endometriosis came back, and she said enough is enough. She then reversed her endometriosis, and she has been disease-free ever since. And that was more than 7 or 8 years ago. You'll hear stories about, like Zoe's story, who has been able to reverse all her symptoms of cystic fibrosis. You can listen to stories of individuals that had cancer and diabetes and heart disease and so many more conditions. So if you know of somebody that has completely reversed their advanced stage chronic degenerative illness using food as medicine, we would love to interview them on our show. And if you are somebody that is suffering from a chronic disease, I encourage you to please reach out to us. We have 2 methods to help you and learn how to reverse your chronic disease. One being our Eat Real to Heal online program that over 6 weeks teaches you everything you need to know and gives you the skills to be able to implement a chronic disease reversing lifestyle into your household, not just for you, but your family, your kids, so that you can successfully reverse your chronic disease and heal and get back to just living the life that you've always wanted. So let's jump into this show today. Today we have Demelza Clay on our show. And Demelza is a nutritionist, and she has a bachelor's in applied science in sports science. And she's also an ICF accredited coach specializing in health and leadership. She has spent the first 20 years of her career as an elite alpine ski coach, a heli ski guide, and a surf guide. And Demelza has lived all over the world in the process. She's decided to get into the health consulting and coaching space after having a breakthrough with her own health. She suffered lifelong struggle with chronic acne, adult acne, and she finally found the solution at 40 years old when she went completely plant-based and focused on healing her gut first. So after all the fad diets, the skin treatments, the doctors peddling snake oils and promoting prescription drugs and everything else you can possibly imagine, well, this situation also started to affect her mental health. So let's dive into this podcast so you can learn all about Demelza's journey in healing her adult acne, in healing her gut, and also healing her mental health. Now, as many of you know, mental health disorders, mood disorders, and other conditions related to the health or related to our mind and our mental state is directly linked to your gut. But unfortunately, not a lot of people know this. And so the way to heal yourself from mental health disorders like depression and anxiety and panic attack disorders, even bipolar, I've worked with clients that have bipolar disorder, we can heal people, we can heal their brain, we can heal their body, we can heal their whole. And when I say we, I mean it's my clients really doing all of the work. But you first have to learn how to use food as medicine to do that. There are too many fad diets out there. There's too many people selling supplements and trying to lead with supplements first. And I'm here to tell you that that is not the path to reversing your chronic diseases. Yes, supplements are really, really important, but only to restore the nutritional deficiencies when you cannot get the nutrients through food. So we always have to lead with food first. So let's dive into this amazing podcast, and you are going to learn so much with Demelza. I'm super excited to have her on the show. And you know what to do, folks. If you know somebody out there who is suffering from a mental health condition, gut health conditions, and acne, please forward this podcast on to them. So let's dive in, and I'll see you at the end of the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Nicolette Richey, and on today's show, we have Demelza Clay. Welcome to the show, Demelza.
Thank you very much, Nicolette.
So you're off in beautiful Okanagan, British Columbia, Canada.
Yes.
Yeah, gorgeous part of the world that has amazing food growing all around you.
Oh, yeah, amazing food. Yes, amazing mountains. We have summer here, a little different to the summer out on the coast from when I was living there years ago. But yeah, it's gorgeous this time of year.
Yeah, no, the Okanagan is amazing. My parents used to bring us there when we were little, and we would camp there and go collect peaches from the farms. And it just so many good memories around beautiful farm food in that area. I just love the Okanagan. So I'm quite jealous because it's almost like going to a tropical place in Canada. If anybody has not been to beautiful Okanagan, BC, then it is definitely a place to visit the next time you're out here.
True, too true. And, I actually was essentially sort of stranded here when the pandemic happened. That's how I came to eventually sort of settle down here. And I'd been through many years before, but people would be calling it the California of Canada. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. I can do that because I'm a, ocean motivated woman at the best of times. And there's just so much to do here. The minute we finish skiing, we're biking, or we're climbing, or we're ski touring, or we're on the lake surfing, which does enough to kill the bug, that's for sure. But yeah,
because you grew up as surfing as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I actually grew up skiing. We had a farm located about 2 hours from Mount Hotham in Australia, which is one of the big 5 ski resorts down there. And we were very lucky. Aussie families, we always spend a lot of time at the by the sea. So yeah, the oceanic lifestyle was still part of it. I was on a farm as well. And so, but definitely now towards the last, I guess, 10, 15 years of my career, the ocean has very much taken over my mountain life. But yeah.
That's good. Amazing. Yeah, that's one thing I love about British Columbia is we can almost do everything here. Yep. The terrain across BC is phenomenal, but much like Australia is too, there's so much to do. So let's dive into your healing hero story, because you have an interesting journey, which I find quite fascinating in that you were trained in nutrition, but didn't necessarily turn to nutrition for your own personal health until much later. So you have a story that really a lot of people who are listening here could probably relate to, whether it's themselves or whether it's their children, but you suffered for a long time from acne. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I did. And I guess it's easy to talk about it now that
Yeah.
it's gone, but during those years, and it was sort of like a really big roller coaster for many years, it was something that I think there needs to be more people talking about skin health, because
Yeah.
it's sort of, I found even amongst my family, um, and all for the best reasons, it was something that people couldn't broach with me. And obviously it was as plain as the nose on my
Yeah.
face, the problem that was going on. And it got very chronic at one stage. And I remember even my family, they would sort of look at me and they kind of reach out. You could tell they sort of wanted to say something, you know, are you
Yeah.
okay? And I really wasn't okay. Um, and it wasn't until I broke down and finally said, oh, look, I really need a hand with this, because I've tried everything, everything,
And when
other
did
than
it
the one last
first
thing.
and when did it first start for you? Like, where as a teenager, or was it
So
later adult onset?
yeah, I mean, like, cut a long story short, never had acne as a teenager. Um, and it probably started in my early 20s. But by that stage, and this is what I realized like 20 years later, I had, I don't even know how many courses of antibiotics
Mhm.
every year. So I had my tonsils taken out at 26. And at the time I went to boarding school from years 9 through 12. So whenever you got sick, they would just send you straight off to the doctor. And normally, I mean, maybe if my parents were able to be there with me, they
Mhm.
would have asked more questions. And hey, you know, can we, you know, does she have to have the antibiotics this time? Can she just stay at home and have 2 weeks rest or something? But back then it was get the antibiotics, go into the
Mhm.
infirmary and hang out on
Yeah.
my own for, oh, we've got a kitten here, for 4 days, and get me straight back into school as quick as possible. And you know, without pointing a finger of blame or anything, that was just the system. And this was
Yeah.
in the late 90s, and people weren't asking those questions about antibiotics back then. So I think by the time my early 20s came, and I was, you know, I was at university and we were partying, and then I got into the ski industry, and there was
Yeah.
just, it just never quite really went away. And there would always be, you know, some outbreaks that were cyclical. I was on the contraceptive pill until I couldn't
Mhm.
take that anymore. About 10 years later, I had, I had all of the pigmentation issues with that. You name a skin condition, I think I've had it. Basically.
Wow. And when all of this started as well, like, who were you reaching out to for help? Dermatologists, did you think it was, I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah,
And
so
because nutrition did not come into it until much later.
it didn't, no.
Yeah.
And I, like, my major was nutrition, sports nutrition, and biomechanics. I did a sports science degree. I think you guys would call it kinesiology here.
Yeah.
So I just went to my doctor, you know, and our system in Australia is that because I was moving around so much, I never really had a family doctor. And so I just knew the clinics that I could go to in between because I was living 6 months a year in Australia and 6 months a year in Colorado by this stage. So I would be seeing any number of physicians, and I would, in their defense, I'd walk in saying, I need a prescription, please. This is what I need,
Yeah.
because I would start taking this drug and the skin condition would sort of, and it wasn't really bad then. It was just, I just had acne through my 20s and I felt like I shouldn't. And these
Hmm.
drugs I thought were going to help with that. But I actually didn't even realize that it was an antibiotic. I mean, this was when the internet was emerging. People
Yeah.
sort of were using email. And I mean, Google, there was no Google back then, but the internet was like a random, you know, page generator. So
Exactly.
I definitely blame myself as well for the ignorance and just not actually researching like we would nowadays with
Yeah.
all the things. But we have this implicit trust with our physicians, right? And now our doctors. And I think that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was going to say we're still in the era where we put doctors on a pedestal as though they know everything and as though
Mm.
they're going to make the best decision for you out of the spectrum of all opportunities that could be available to you for your health. So for example, you could have 10 different people come in all with the same condition, and one might treat it with herbs or homeopathy or vitamins and supplements and nutrients and diet or medication or surgery. Like there's this whole plethora, and we put our doctors on a pedestal thinking that they're going to make the best decision for us, when at the end of the day, the doctor is there to if you want a drug, they will give you a drug because that's what they're trained in, knowing how to do. So I think it's really important that people take responsibility for themselves, which no one was ever taught on how to develop a really healthy relationship with your doctor. It was like, no, you go to the doctor for all the answers and you go home. Right.
Absolutely.
So I love that you did bring that up and that you are taking responsibility, because I think we could wrap up the show right now and be like, this is the main lesson here.
We're done. That's it.
This is what everyone needs to know. Take responsibility for yourself and stop putting it on your doctor. If you're in a car accident and you can't speak for yourself, of course your doctor is going to, take action to save your life. But when it comes to these chronic health conditions, people, you got to do some work.
Absolutely. And in their defense, doctors are under the pump. They're trying to deal with a healthcare system, which it's a little different in Australia, but they're busy. And once I did finally decide to dig into my own and trust my own level of knowledge and expertise, and at least, I know how to read a study. I started, doing the thing that you do. And so that's when I finally decided to trust myself and do the research. But, that's when you also realize, hang on a second, doctors have probably done less units of study on nutrition than I have as an undergrad.
Totally. 100%. Doctors get about 1 to 4 hours on average of nutrition training in 8 to 10 years of med school. Like 1 to 4 hours, and some none. Exactly. And in some schools, they're trying to lower that. So it's important that people understand that. And also, I even find a lot of nutritionists that I teach and a lot of doctors and physicians that I teach, even though they'll specialize in something, but they don't always think about the body as a complete whole system in relationship to their environment, which is a complete whole system, which together is still one complete system. And without that, then we can think of the skin as being this separate entity that we need to treat differently than we treat the liver or the other organs. And so this part, I find, also then slows down our ability to find a solution towards a lot of health issues that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not as though we have like the food processing division and the movement division of the body and the thinking division.
And the sleeping. Everybody's just like, oh, just sleep well and you'll be better. Or just drink a juice and you'll be better. I'm like, it doesn't work that way, people. It's a complete system and we need to address it. So, okay. So you had been given all of these antibiotics throughout school and medications and like the quick fix, like let's get her better, get back in. And so by the time you're 20, which people need to understand, like, when you're young, you can get by with, minimal nutrition, but then you hit 20 and drinking and stress and working hard. And if you have a system that's on the cusp, guaranteed, it will most likely break down in your 20s.
Absolutely. So, I was one of those people that was always probably considered pretty athletic. I identified as an athlete. I identified as a healthy person too, which when it became vastly obvious that my health wasn't good, it really did mess with my mental health. But I think it was minocycline or minomycin. I can't remember. It's one of the tetracycline drugs that I took for a really long time. I never did Roaccutane, pardon me. I'd been to see dermatologists. To answer your question, I did eventually go. I went to see cosmetic physicians, all sorts of people all the people that do laser and all of the sort of skin treatments. And a lot of them just said to me, look, you've got acne skin and you're always going to have acne. So if you want to solve the problem, you need to take this drug. And I had another couple of friends from school actually that had done that, and I just thought to myself, there's no way. Like I train, I felt like the common approach at the time and the diet. I was a fairly big meat eater, but I ate the healthy meats, and I, grew up on a farm. So I had that whole identity of that being okay. And I guess I just sort of got to the point where I decided I wasn't going to do any more of these drugs, because I had to get off birth control. I had to get off all these other things. And I just wanted, I was taking steroid creams at one point. I had perioral dermatitis. Which is kind of linked to acne in a way. There was rosacea. And because I'm out in the elements a lot at this stage, I'd finished my undergrad and I got involved in the ski industry, and that became I just thought I'd do a couple of seasons, but 15, 16, 20 years later, and I did a lot of back-to-back seasons. So of course my face was getting a lot of exposure to the elements. And with that, I think there's a two-pronged situation going on. You've got whatever's going on in your gut, which I then, at the end of it all, the victory story was I got onto all of that. But then there is actually a physical condition living up there in your skin that no amount of healthy eating and what have you can actually address. So, yeah.
So tell us more about that, because I always, at the beginning workshops, I love teaching people about how we have, little spiders living in our skin, and every dermatologist studies this, but most people have no idea. So let's talk a little bit more. What did you learn about that?
Well, so when I first got involved with this whole movement, the thing for me, being a farm girl, was the whole vegan thing. I mean, there is a lot about the vegan movement these days that really resonates with me. And I bet when people say to me, "Are you vegan?" I'm not. I'm plant-based, and I'm mostly around probably between 5 to 10%. I might eat. I eat more fish than anything, especially when I'm traveling and I can't get my hands on protein sources. But I had gone through, I guess, just to cut a long story, I'd been to naturopaths, I'd been to doctors that specialized in skin conditions. I was taking an obscene amount of zinc and copper at one point because my levels were weird. I had all these blood tests. And then I doubled down on the whole paleo thing. So I do train. I'm involved with the CrossFit community to a level, just because it's convenient. But I kind of got gluten-free. Oh, it's going to be gluten-free. That's the problem. And so, pardon me, I think eating all of those high protein, high animal protein sources eventually just tipped the scale over the edge, and it got from pretty bad to extremely bad. So I would wake up in the morning, there'd be new spots every single day. I had them in my elbows here. I was going through a bit of a stressful time, and my one girlfriend who we trained together, she is German, she's a good, beautiful girl, and she said, "Melzy, why don't you go check out this gut health thing? I think this might be good for you." And of course, I've always been quite keyed into what's going on in health outside of what I was doing in my career. And I just kind of knew that going vegan was really the only thing I hadn't tried. Cutting out all the meat was the only thing I hadn't tried, but I hadn't given it any thought or research, or really, I had a lot of prejudices about how I needed meat and all these things. So I really had to change my own thinking and break down all of those barriers for me just being able to drop it and give it a try. And really, pardon me, by this stage, I was so desperate. My my mental health was in the toilet. I couldn't look at people in the eye anymore, and working in the ski industry was kind of convenient because I could keep the bottom half of my face kind of covered up sometimes, but being in these environments, I sort of felt the need to cover up these spots on my face, these lesions, almost these things that were just living in there permanently. They'd never go away. So anyway, I had, a pretty challenging time. Depression, anxiety was massive in my life at that stage. And it wasn't until I was on a surf trip in the Mentawai, and I was doing a bit of private surf coaching with a gentleman down there, and I actually cut my face open with a surfboard fin. I had 13 stitches down here. Can't remember the side. And I just thought, all right, well, this is it. So now I've got a massive scar on my face. I'm covered in pimples. I think I was single at that point, and especially in this day and age when I think women especially are expected to be, quite perfect, and especially women in sports and women in the outdoor industry. We're still supposed to be, I just thought, okay, well, I guess that's it then.
Well,
Say goodbye to being beautiful, because I had this, he was a chef and a school teacher, basically sutured up my face. You could see my teeth hanging out from this little scratch here, or this massive cut.
Wow.
But I had started cutting out all the meat at that stage. And so I got home, I was in between seasons, I took a break, and I thought, this is my only chance. This is the only thing I haven't tried. I'm ready just to crawl into a hole and never come out. And so I basically decided to go 100% vegan for 6 months, which was probably a tough way to go about it, as you know, cold turkey. And some people can do that, and some people can't. And then what I also did was I connected with a group in Australia who basically have a treatment where they get in there with this little needle, and it's like a cell, it's an ablation. So they go in there and they actually kill the overactive sebum cells, or the sebum pores, essentially. And that was amazing. So that sort of got rid of the infection that had been living there for a long time. But then I just started researching gut health, and I just got maniacal with it. And of course, everything I was listening to, all the people that I was following, everything from, Zach Bush and Rich Roll's been a great conduit for all of that. And then I just hit the books, and I got back into a lot of the science that's going on in this world of gut health. And I decided everything I do from now on, everything I put in my mouth, is going to be, I'm just going to approach my health through the lens of gut health. And
so let's dive into that a little bit more, because for people to understand the relationship between their gut and mental health, we've done a lot of shows on this podcast where we talk about the gut-brain axis, and how it's really important that our gut health is optimal, because we create more than 95% of our dopamine and serotonin in our large intestine through the bacteria in our large intestine. And that gets absorbed by the brain, and those are your feel-good hormones. So that relationship is hard, it's in the medical literature. We cannot deny that. And in the last 10 years, it's every day, I can't remember how many hundreds of studies are coming out every single day on gut-brain health. So this is in the medical literature, but what's not in the medical literature, as it's not as prolific, is the relationship between gut health and acne. So what I would love for you to do is paint that picture for people, because I know that people really, it's important that our listeners understand this, because your gut health really, it's responsible for absolutely everything. But let's just talk about it in relationship to acne, especially because we have these shows that are on television. My daughter just started watching one. She's 15 years old. My kids have perfect skin. They've eaten plant-based mostly their whole life. But she's watching the show where this one kid has very, very, very progressive advanced acne, and they throw everything in the kitchen sink at it. And diet is literally they don't mention gut health. They talk about not eating dairy and not eating gluten, but it goes much deeper than that. And so, but they don't touch on it. And this is sad, because it's 2022 and this is what 15-year-old kids are watching. So what are they going to do? They're going to save up their money, and they're going to pay the tens of thousands of dollars for acne treatment, which in this kid's case, it didn't work. Right? It worked a little bit. It worked a little bit. So if you can paint that picture for people so that they really understand the science behind this, that would be great.
Well, I mean, I was broke trying to treat my skin. I was stone cold broke. I just couldn't put any more money into it. But Look, essentially, without having any solid testing and evidence to tell you exactly what was going on, but understanding everything I read resonated with me on such a deep level. So, I probably had a fairly advanced case of leaky gut.
Mm-hmm.
And without going in there and getting diagnoses or anything, I just, essentially I would have been suffering from a pretty fantastic case of dysbiosis, which is that that degradation of the biodiversity in our gut. So just the same as, now we're starting to talk about biodiversity in nature and in our gardens, because we realize that our soil is lacking biodiversity. Exactly the same thing is happening in our gut. So essentially, I didn't have as many of different strains of microbiota in my gut as what I needed. And without going into and diving into specifics and going, okay, well, which specific one do I need to ingest? And should I get a probiotic? And we'll talk about those in a little second. But I just essentially approached it by going with the most plant-based diverse diet that I could possibly muster. It was all about eating as many different plants as possible, plant-based proteins, using lots of herbs, obviously alcohol, cutting back on all of those is a huge part.
So hold on one second.
Yeah.
You said the magic word. Everybody wants to ask me about this all the time. Where do I get my protein from? So when you say plant-based protein, are you talking about whole food plant-based proteins? You're not talking about like a shake in a jar at the gym. Okay, good. So this is how we have to be as nutritionists and as people in the world of teaching people about whole food plant-based. Like, it's so important that we really get specific on this, because like if we talk about salt, everybody thinks like, let's put Himalayan crystal salt over everything. If we talk about sugar, people are like, I'm not eating fruit anymore because it's got so much sugar. And if we talk about protein, people, like, so many people are like, oh, I'm going to run out and buy these protein packs and protein shakes and protein everything. And man,
we're protein obsessed. We're protein obsessed because it's the only thing we've been taught to pay attention to. So 97% of us are protein deficient. And however, I think 100% of us have 2 times more protein than what we actually need in our diet. So I mean, I was lucky because I already did eat tofu and tempeh and things like that. I'm probably, my bean game and my pulses and all those legumes, that part of my of cooking I was never exposed to. In Australia, I had the typical meat and 3 veg kind of upbringing. So I definitely learned a lot. But protein as a macronutrient comes from plants. The strongest animals in the world, the gorilla, the cow that we eat, they get their protein from plants. And so, I don't want to have a conversation demonizing meat and how, I think that's not really the conversation I want to get into, because I think people get very triggered by that. And I think a little tiny bit of meat here and there is definitely not going to hurt anyone. But at the levels that we're eating it now, compared to what we were 100 years ago or 200 years ago, using or enjoying meat as a celebratory food, I just decided to go back to that. So I was really inspired by the Blue Zones cultures. I was really inspired by Dr. Will Bulsiewicz's work. And really, it was just that notion of diversity that was the last piece to the puzzle, was actually bringing in, I mean, I had a lot of I guess, like healthy salad and vegetable food with my meats when I was eating it, but I was probably only eating the 5 different types of veggies, whatever I grabbed. I just keep on eating them through the week, rather than having this, like, nice big garden of things in my fridge to essentially kind of like help replant the gut garden, So it was all about diversity, eating as many different live, fresh plants as possible. And really, I wouldn't say, I mean, I train, I'm active, I would say that protein now is a fairly inconsequential focus of my diet, which a lot of people feel they're really confused by, because sometimes I can, in the environments that I've been working in, people will say to me, like, what do you do? How do you stay so strong? Like, you're muscly, right? And the question is always about protein.
Yeah.
But there's no fiber in protein. And getting to the fiber thing, that it makes me it just makes me kick myself for all those years that I struggled so hard with this problem at university, first, second, third year, all of those years that I was studying nutrition. They were saying the same thing back then.
I know.
Eat fiber. Why? And the problems that we're experiencing back then, this is kind of like around the time of the packaged food, or the ultra processed packaged food revolution, I guess. And this is when marketing of these foods was really just starting to kind of ramp up. But the message back then was fiber. And then once I finally started understanding that on a deeper level as well, bringing it in and feeling the difference in my own diet, I was just like, a lot has changed in nutrition, but also not a lot has changed as well. It's still just the same nuts and bolts. So you think about the way our grandparents were eating, or their grandparents, right? So,
well, and this is the part where, anytime we put out a podcast, we put out a show, or if we write a book or teach a course, it's incredible how we have to break it down so simply for our listeners and our readers, because of the fact that we have been saying the same thing, like for hundreds of years. I mean, anybody in any indigenous culture from anywhere in the world knows you eat the plants. And like you said, that if you're going to get a meat-based protein, it's usually eaten very sparingly, and it's usually for celebration, somebody's funeral, somebody's wedding. It might be more bone broths and like shredded meat in a dish, but predominantly it is all beans, whole grains, whole vegetables, and that is full protein. Like, you don't need to even add the meat to make it a complete protein. But this is where we live in a world where, and again, because we look to others to tell us things instead of just, I mean, we're all taught this in basic biology and first year university, plants, carrots, romaine lettuce, peppers, it's all it's chocked full of protein. And you mix it with some beans and a whole grain, rice or quinoa, it's protein. But everybody has been made to think, because of this interesting and very manipulative food marketing world, that the only place you can get protein is from meat. But then if you can get protein from there, of course you can, but then you don't get the fiber.
Yeah. And I think that, to be fair to, I feel very compassionate towards people out there who are struggling with their health, that don't have a background in nutrition or anything really. They're learning about health from marketing.
Yeah.
They're learning about health from the back of their cereal box.
Yeah.
They're learning about health from the what do you call it, industry sponsored science that's out there.
Yeah.
Where there's a little bit of an agenda going on. We get it hammered through us, real men eat meat, because they need to be strong. And so
or just fortified. Even just the word fortified, like fortified with vitamin B and fortified with fiber and fortified. But people don't understand fortified means you're eating cardboard that the food industry has had to replace with, add so many nutrients to it just to even make it,
Yeah. And I try and stay away from sort of conspiratorial. Look, there's definitely stuff going down in the food industry, right? We know that. But I think that they're just trying to make sales. We live in a capitalist world. Everyone, all of the industries out there, whether it be dairy, which is in decline, all of the sectors, they're all just trying to maintain their share of stomach, or their share of plate. And that's how they refer to what gets put into our mouths every single week. And they're going to spend a lot of money on marketing, a lot of money on neuroscientists who know how to engage change. Yeah. They're going to spend a lot of money on people who are very good at putting together things that, how many times have you watched an ad before on television and gone, oh my gosh, gee, I wouldn't eat a bucket of KFC right now if you paid me. But, you see sometimes, and I think the important message that I always try to hammer home, I'm sorry, that's the kittens.
No worries.
The important message that I try to hammer home with people who are they're on the precipice. They know they need to change. And just like me, in this exact same spot, I was like, oh, am I never going to be able to have like even just a couple bites of steak again? Oh my God, like being a vegan, like, you know, and even just the label, you know, being a vegan or what have you. But it's not about absolutes. It's not about going from one extreme to the other. You know, if you want to have wings with your mates and a beer or whatever you've been doing your whole life, first of all, the first question is, do you need to have as much of it?
Yeah.
Well, definitely not, you know. But a lot of people get very overwhelmed because they feel like these things are going to be taken away from them. You know, and food is very cultural. It's very personal. You know, the way we eat, it's attached to family memories. It's our travels, you know, our cultural heritage. So, and our geography in many ways, like what can we actually get in certain parts of the world. So people get very triggered when they are faced with the notion of you're going to have to shift some of these habits of yours. And they're very, you know, eating is a very habitual, you know, we call it in neuroscience, it's a limbic thinking kind of preference, right? So what we tend to do with people is we want to try and dig down into those limbic habits and just ask the right questions to help people unpack exactly why they're doing it. Is it still serving them? What might they be able to change? And the change always comes in these little tiny micro units, you know, of things that they can just layer on every day, every week.
Yeah. Or they hit rock bottom. Like, you know, like you said, I'd spent every last dollar on trying to get this treated, and your mental health is at a place where you're just like, this is, you know, how do I do this? You know, do I just crawl up in a hole? And that's what I tend to find is that in this day and age, we're so lucky because we have this wealth of knowledge, but sometimes it's just too much information to also weed through. Then, you know, so you can definitely, you know, get in touch with the right person who's going to share hopefully the right knowledge with you. But in the world of nutrition as well, I mean, nutritionists graduate and they'll, you know, they can, depending who you get, they can be teaching you how to eat keto or paleo or, you know, tell someone, well, you know, you're going to feel better if you just eat chicken and eggs. I have many clients that come to me, chicken, eggs, and cucumber, just eat that.
Yeah.
And that's
and
the only thing.
avocados or something. Yeah.
Exactly. As opposed to, you know, so there's a lot of information to weed through, but then on the other side as well is the information is very complicated, and it's important, you know, for somebody to, or the other option I was going to say is that you do hit rock bottom, and where you go, you know what, then I'm ready to throw in the towel, try anything, be drastic with it. And in the case that you did, until it's almost like, you know, process of elimination. This is not working. This is not working. This is not working. And this finally works.
Exactly. And I think the thing that I think that all of us as health professionals are, obviously most of us are very aware of this. However, some people aren't. And those that are looking for solutions, sometimes they're in a state of fight and flight. They're desperate. You know, they are not thinking straight. And so when I come back to my own little journey there, like, look, I had an education. I could have dug a little deeper or asked better questions, but, you know, but I was busy. You know, I was flying all around the world, and I didn't have very good mentoring myself at that time. Like I didn't, and I definitely, I asked people. I went to naturopaths. I went to all sorts of different doctors, and they all gave me very conflicting advice. And I think when people are in a really deep state of shame with their body, this vehicle that carries them around, they do some crazy stuff. You know, I did some crazy stuff. I did some, like, I didn't want to talk about it. We don't have time, but like, you know, the number of things that I thought, oh, well, I'll just give it a go, you know, because you're desperate, right? And then by the time I really started to formulate the thing, and the end story of the skin issue was that I started putting on weight. So this is, you know, the person who's always been considered, I guess I've got an ectomorphy somatotype, but I think as I mean, as an indication of just how poor my gut health was, Mrs., metabolism of a racehorse woman over here, I started putting on weight and I couldn't get it off. So I was like exercising maniacally. My skin was, I would just first thing in the morning, I would touch my face just to try and find out what else had I'd eat something and I could feel the lesions starting to fill, for lack of a better term. So I went to Sri Lanka and I did an Ayurvedic cleanse. And they said to me, your gut is there's something wrong with your gut. And this was like, I was right in Sri Lanka. Like they weren't speaking a lot of English there. And it was like one of those really traditional ones. But I started taking things that were the same, common pieces of advice and denominators out of some of these different systems. And I went traditional, I went Western and everything. And so they said to me, you need to eat just really lightly cooked vegetables. Don't eat any more meat, don't eat, like a kale salad is the worst thing you could eat,
Exactly.
And everyone's saying that kale is, the superfood. So, I had to start treating my gut like this little baby that didn't have any teeth. I had to basically feed myself like an old person, with lots of different nutritious foods, just so that I could give my gut a little rest from having to do all this heavy lifting all the time. So I also went to see an amazing osteopath. I had an issue going on with my right foot. I couldn't train, and I was, it was almost like a nerve thing, and there was all the other stuff going on. And he was an American man who laid me down on the table. I walked in limping, and he actually ended up doing a bunch of craniosacral work on me. And I'm open to anything at that stage. I would have done anything. And I walked out of that place without limping. But before I left, he did a whole bunch of work around my stomach. And he said to me, it's your gut. He said, your gut is what the problem is. And he didn't say anything about gut health or your microbiome or anything like that. So I really had to sort of piece together all the elements, I guess, that I'd been, and I think a lot of people have these issues. You speak to people here and there about their health, and they've got this big, long story full of different chapters where they've tried this and it didn't work, and they've tried that, and they just get into analysis paralysis. And then once you're there, you basically are disempowered, and then you just stop trying, and I think when it comes to weight loss and people who are dealing with all sorts of, weight is kind of like the downstream symptom or consequence that happens from especially gut health being so poor. But that seems to be the vehicle with which most people come to me. It's like, well, I'm really overweight. And it's like, well, tell me what else is going on. It's like, well, I haven't actually had a bowel movement for 4 days, and I usually take 2 a week.
Yeah.
Like, wow,
We were just, I was just chatting about this with my friend who's been visiting, and because she's been, she turned to a fully plant-based whole food diet. She's in the Canadian military. She's outperforming all her peers physically. She's been in the military for 20 plus years. And it's the first time, like, she's never been as fit and as strong. And so then, of course, her peers are looking at her saying, like, what is it that you're doing? And she's like, I'm eating lots of vegetables and, plant-based whole food diet. And so we were chatting about it, but of course, she's now getting all the questions because everybody wants to pick her brain. Like, where does the protein come from? What about the fat in the food? Like, don't we have to have lots of salt on things, et cetera, et cetera. And so now she's been faced with these questions, but the stories she's hearing from people. So she's getting it firsthand, and she's not a nutritionist, but she's hearing the stories. And one of the things we just talked about, how some people are coming to her being like, I go to the bathroom 8 times a day, and I don't go to the bathroom more than twice a week, or sometimes even once a week. And, so it's been interesting because I've collected data on thousands and thousands of people over the last 15 years. And the common denominator, common denominator is gut health. There are people who have not had a lot of fiber in their life, taken lots of antibiotics, and, to the point where I think, like, your osteopath, you probably walked in, and because he's seen it a million times over, he also knows it's gut health. just by
Mhm.
touching your skin, looking at your skin. It can be from smelling up somebody's breath. It can be from feeling
Mm.
their hair. Like your body will tell you exactly what state of health you're in.
Yeah.
And it's just there in front of you. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter whether it's Western medicine, Eastern medicine, they all say the exact same thing. It's your
Yep.
liver and it's your gut.
Yeah, yeah, the liver, what is it now they're talking about? It used to be all about the gut brain axis, and now they're sort of saying the gut brain liver
Yeah.
axis. So yeah, there is a lot of things that are lining up between more Western approaches and traditional
Yeah.
approaches. And having traveled, a lot in my life and for my career, it's been, I just feel really excited actually, because it just feels like there's this really um encouraging movement happening with health, even in the very short time. I think I started trying to cut meat. I was living in Japan at the time. Good place to try and go
Mhm.
plant-based, although they do love their meats there, and they are now as a culture having a blue zone in their country, but as a culture they're starting to move towards these massive cuts of meat, and so that's unfortunate, and with
But
it
I
they're
don't think their blue zone is even a blue zone anymore. They
yeah,
just, yeah, which I just was reading about, that
yeah,
their lifespan is declining as a result of adopting more of this Western high meat diet and
exactly.
packaged processed food, high sodium, high refined sugar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so that's where and I think it must have been like 2014 or 15 is when I first started to really think, I was considering for the first time, okay, I'm going to have to start cutting out meat. I think that might be the only thing that I've not tried. Um, and depending on where you are in the world, that can be really difficult. I was living in
Yeah.
Maldives at one point. I lived on a boat for 8 months. I mean, I could hardly even get a fresh salad.
Yeah.
I mean, fish is something that does agree with my gut a little more. I don't think we should all be upping our fish intake, but I think
Yeah.
a little bit here and there is okay. And there's an environmental and oceanic health conversation in there as well. But
Mhm.
that is the thing that usually sustains me when I'm traveling. So, and it's getting a whole lot easier. I was in Nicaragua, way down in the south of Nicaragua at the start of the year, end of last year. I was there 10 years ago as well. And I found sauerkraut, kimchi. I found a peanut butter that was alive. It was a probiotic peanut butter somehow that some local expat person had made. I was just down in Mexico last week, and you can definitely eat unhealthy in all those places.
Yeah.
But if you just spend some time looking, things will pop out at you. And even some things that are not necessarily new age, but if you understand the concepts, and what fiber is and what fiber isn't,
Mhm.
and you'll find all sorts of things here and there that will help you eat in that way that you want to when you're traveling, because we come up with all sorts of excuses too, right? So, I can't do it
Mhm.
yet because it's summer, and or I can't do it now because I'm traveling, and yeah,
Yeah, but for millions of years, I mean, every single human on the
yeah.
planet ate plant-based with supplemented with a
Mhm.
little bit of meat if they could afford it or if they had access to it and if it was available. It wasn't readily available. We didn't have industrialized farms
Yeah.
100 years ago. And so if you were rich, you could afford like a rack of lamb but every human being on the entire planet
Mhm.
ate predominantly vegetables. And people often say to me, well, what about the Inuit in Northern Canada? Yeah, they die 10 years on average earlier than the rest of
Earlier.
Canadians because they eat predominantly high
Yeah.
fat animal based diet. And the only time when their death rate increases is during the really, really cold winter months when they don't have access to all the sea vegetables and land
Mhm.
vegetables that they normally would be eating. So what
Mhm.
happens is their bodies become hyperacidic and they have strokes. So that it shows you that the demand for these phyto-rich nutrient plant-based
Mm.
vegetables, fruits, whole grains, everything, pulses and legumes is so important. So when you made this switch, you started getting real fiber into your diet. You started getting this abundance of nutrients. It was a diversity that came from all of these places. So your microbiome is not just being colonized by like 3 strains of probiotic that you buy at the grocery store, you know. So what happened to your skin at this point and your mental health?
So I didn't do any probiotics. I think I did some at the start, but I knew that they actually can hamper your gut health, as you know.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the colonies that you have living in there, they're resistant sometimes to outside strains. So, you know, people often associate gut health to taking a probiotic. Oh, no, I'm good. No, I'm taking a probiotic. I'm fine. My doctor says I'm good, you know.
Yeah.
Well, so for myself, first of all, I had a huge amount of energy. You know, I had, I'm 43 now. So then I was in my late 30s, but I was just getting so sore in my joints. And so yeah, those pustules and those bumps that lived permanently under my skin, some of them were being physically removed by that group I told you about. And if anyone is in Australia and they want to know, we can put the links to these people in the show notes. But so yeah, eventually when I was eating a meal, I'd wake up in the morning and my skin would feel flat versus there being like braille. It was almost like braille on my skin, just a whole new series of bumps and so that eventually started to really change, and it happened. It took a while to get that infection out. It took a while to get the scarring and the redness out. I think I did a little bit of peeling just to sort of help that outer dermal layer. I'd had a issue with anxiety for a while, and I just sort of thought that it was just normal and that you just one of those things you had to put up with. But after a while eating this way, I just noticed I didn't have those. And for me, it was always when I started exercising. So it was like a response to fight and flight. My brain would just be like, oh, okay, wait a second, we got to run. What's going on? And so my heart would go at 1,000,000 miles an hour for about 30 seconds. And I could be like paddling out on my longboard in a 1-foot swell. So it wasn't as though there was anything to be scared of. So those things really just started to calm down. And, you know, the best thing, even if I had a couple bumps or a couple of, you know, pimples in there, is that I started being able to look people right in the eye and flash a big smile. And that was, I think, the most rewarding thing of that whole journey, of that whole process. I remember, you know, watching so many women and people around me who had perfect skin. And I'm not a makeup wearer, and that's just, you know, my deal. And some people are, and that's great too. But I'd watch them put their makeup on every morning over the top of this just gorgeous, radiant skin, and they wanted it to look a certain tone or color, and then the rouge would go on or whatever. And I would just sit there going, God, I just would kill to walk around without makeup on. Like so many people choose not to. But yeah, eventually that was my reality. I could start, even if it wasn't perfect, I could at least start. I didn't feel like I had to cover it up all the time, which could present problems as well. But when it came to the choice between letting it all out, you know, if I'm out and about, and just feeling a little bit better about myself and covering it up, sometimes I would do that. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And it all goes together as well, that, you know, the amount of energy that was probably being just lost from you as you're stressing about how to deal with this condition, plus, like you had mentioned, shame. And as much as anybody out there, I mean, you know, we don't want to fat shame anyone. We don't want to skin shame anyone. We don't want to, you know, for any reason. But the reality is, you do wake up in the morning and you do look at your face in the mirror. And if every day you see something that you're like, okay, what is going on here? Why is this there? It's robbing your energy, trying to find a solution, having to do the research, trying to do all of these new things, whether you're spending money. So just to be able to clear that up, I imagine gave you like almost like a 2-fold energy boost, because now you're not being drained trying to find a solution to this.
It was massive. And there was still, you know, once we get rid of these problems, you know, and I speak to people that we work with who have like lost the weight. Some of the mental health problems that we had will catch up with us if we don't do the work. So that was, you know, a part of it as well. just to really truly feel happy in my skin again. But the amount of time and energy I spent in front of a mirror trying to either cover it up or, treat it with these chemicals and was just, it definitely robbed me of many, many good years where I could have been a lot happier had I just been. And it's funny with things like acne and skin conditions, psoriasis. Well, that's more of an autoimmune, but people have eczema and there's certain things I think that we really play down as sort of not as important. I remember some people, even in my family, saying to me, look, it's only your skin, don't worry about it so much. And they were just trying to sort of make me feel a little bit better. But it's just like, do you want me to, why don't you jump inside this and walk around for a day and look at the pity on people's faces when they look at you and they just go, oh, that poor girl. And I see women, usually younger women, obviously, but there are a lot of mature women with really, really bad skin. And that's an area that I'm moving into more as a coach. I want to connect with more of these people and help them understand some of the ingredients that need to go into their recovery. But I see women out there all the time and I just want to grab them by the hand and just, hey, can I help you? I just want to help you. I understand what it's like to be behind that mask that you have on right now. And it's a really, for me, I don't think a lot of people understood how deeply it was affecting me. It's something that I really just had to kind of internalize, because you get a lot of people, and maybe I think people who are dealing with their weight as well they get the same message, like, don't worry about it, you're beautiful inside. And it's like, I'm miserable, I'm in pain, I had inflammation everywhere, all through my neck, and it wasn't just having a few pimples for a couple of years. It was so.
But this is why I'm glad that you bring that up too, because this is for myself, who have, I've worked with, thousands of people, hundreds of chronic diseases, everything from chronic acne, infertility, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune disorders, head to toe psoriasis, like you name it. I've worked with these conditions, and now working with individuals who have genetic conditions that prior to this, everyone told them, well, diet has nothing to do with it. And well, in fact, we're proving them wrong. And we're, getting ready to publish papers with the fact that diet has everything to do with even genetic conditions. So when I see somebody who is overweight, when I see somebody who has acne, when I see somebody who has to take insulin injections, other people might say, well, no, that's okay. And I look at it and I know there's underlying inflammation. And if you have underlying inflammation, you have underlying chronic pain in your joints. If you have underlying chronic pain, then you also have less ability to participate fully in life, because A, you're in chronic pain, B, you have chronic inflammation, which is also affecting for women their menstrual cycle, because it all goes together. So now every month they're dealing with PMS issues that they don't have to be dealing with. And so when I see somebody with these conditions, I don't just see a little bit of psoriasis and a little bit of eczema. And other people need to understand it goes much deeper than that. It's also going to the chronic diarrhea, the chronic constipation. It also contributes to the migraines. It also goes to, I know that they have cupboards of medication that they're like, do I take this? I don't want to take it. It doesn't make me feel. So they're dealing with the side effects of the medication. On top of that, they probably have hair loss or excess hair growth in places that they don't want it. So when people say, you know what, it's okay to be overweight and it's okay, it's just a few pimples or acne on your face, and you know what, it's beautiful inside, that person is not feeling beautiful inside. Right? And
absolutely.
And so we have to change this narrative. And yes, we all need to love everybody in whatever state that they are in. 100%. It shouldn't change the way we love these individuals who have these chronic conditions going on. But we have to stop saying it's actually okay as well, because we live in a world of a chronic disease epidemic, and people are in pain and they're hurting. And the solution is actually very, very simple. But we're never
Well
going to
said.
get there if we say like, you know what, just get over it. It's fine. Just a few
No.
pimples or just a few excess pounds. We're
Yeah.
never going to get there if we actually try and normalize it.
Yeah. And so well said. I mean, like, this is not about fat shaming,
No.
and unfortunately we live in such a vocal environment, between our social media, and everyone's got a little platform, everyone's got an opinion, and that's fine. um but when it comes to diet media and the number of people that have spoken to me and they're like, oh, well, I read about a study and then I read about another study, and it's like, well, did you read the study or did you read a
TikTok.
journalist's rundown of said study?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was an article, but it was in the New York Times or something. It's like, well, that doesn't mean anything,
Yeah.
So in the defense of those who are really very confused, the environment has been set up to confuse. Now, they haven't set the environment up to confuse us because they want us to be unhealthy.
No.
They've set the environment up to confuse us because they want us to keep clicking.
Yeah.
They want us to keep clicking on the articles. They want us to, here's eggs are good for you. Now eggs are bad for you. Potatoes are bad for you. It's like they want to keep it. It's a function of media.
It is.
What media has become, online media, whatever is going to keep people clicking, and the algorithms know what is going to keep people clicking. So again, I try to stay away from conspiratorial narratives with this, and just help people understand it's just the way it is. There's a lot of good people out there in those, working for the meat industry. They're not all like demons who are trying to ruin our health. They're all just there trying to put meals on the plate for their own family.
There are humans who they've grown up under a certain narrative that has said that, okay, meat is good. Great. I'm going to be a meat producer. And then that's the narrative that they live by until later on they maybe understand that's not the case. It's the same as Baskin Robbins. Do you remember Baskin Robbins?
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful story as well, is like you grow up under, the king of ice cream makers until you realize like, oh, I don't know if that ice cream is really good for people and it's potentially contributing to poor health. And so then all of a sudden, the business gets handed down and you have a choice to make. Do I perpetuate this or do I move in a different direction, as in John Robbins did from Diet for a New America? So it all comes down, and I don't believe I really truly believe humans are out there to try and send their kids to school, love their families, put a roof over their head. And so I agree with you. It's not It's not a conspiracy, but it is that there's been systems in place and they get perpetuated. And it is what we started off with at the beginning of the show. It's taking responsibility for yourself. And people need to understand there's no one pill wonder solution out there.
No. I mean, Brene Brown, this challenged me more than almost anything that she has published. And a lot of it challenged me a lot because the vulnerability stuff for me, I was like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be strong,
And vulnerability is strength. Yeah. And strength is vulnerability.
I know. It took me a while, but anyway, I got there. And then, so we're all practicing, but she, in one of her what was it? Maybe I think it was in Rising Strong. She talks about how she was challenged by her therapist who said, Brene, do you think that everyone's just doing the best they can with the tools they have? And she went through this whole story, as she would, because how she's like, no way, and of course she got to the end of it, and I was right there in her camp, but everyone's just doing the best they can with the tools they have. And the more that we can really, and it's all about the tools they have, the education, what have you, the environment. So I mean, I think if we can all start to get a little bit more compassionate and less polarized around, what's right and wrong. I mean, you want to start an argument in my family, you start talking about what is the right thing and the wrong thing to eat.
Yeah.
I think maybe in anyone's family or
in anyone's family.
Yeah. But I mean, like for me, I wasn't trying to lose weight when I was going plant-based. I mean, it was definitely something that it was really, I mean, on top of everything else, the massive cut on my face and the acne, and then, lo and behold, that thing that women around me had been telling me was going to happen my whole life. Oh, you're not going to be like that forever. You're going to, don't worry, everyone gets bigger as they get older. And I always thought that it wouldn't happen to me, but then it started happening. And lo and behold, while I was addressing everything through the lens of gut health, I was committed to that, the weight just dropped off me. And we're talking like maybe 15 to 20, I'm going to talk pounds.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of my friends would have said, yeah, we've noticed that you've put a little weight on. They wouldn't say that I was a, overweight person, but I wasn't even trying. I wasn't even exercising more. I was actually overtraining at the time. That was one of the issues. But so the weight coming off was a consequence of my gut health improving beyond measure, really. So, that's just an example of the trickle-down effects that some of these little things that we can do, can have on our overall health. But
yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's important too that in this world where, I always joke with my husband, I'm like, sorry, babe, I should have just marketed myself as a weight loss program. We'd be millionaires right now, as opposed to, a chronic disease reversal.
I don't know about that.
Well, no. Oh, people.
It's hard.
Yeah. But the beautiful thing is too, like with my clients is, they eat plant-based whole food. And for most of my clients, they, they're given 3 months to live, 6 months to live. And so there's no exercise. Like we have to conserve every bit of mitochondrial energy for cellular regeneration and healing, and eliminating the disease and repairing the body. And so exercise is not on the program.
No.
And they're like, but I'm going to gain weight. And I'm like, trust me on this one. If you have weight to lose, you will lose it. If you have weight to gain, you will gain it. Like it's a beautiful thing because it debunks the whole caloric myth. And we have also grown up in a world where everybody's so obsessed with like over exercising, overtraining so that they can stay slim. Meanwhile, they're eating all of these foods that disrupt your hormone system, disrupt your microbiome, and force you to put on weight versus, just like there's no one in my African village that is overweight. Like the people, they eat plant-based whole food. It's clean, it's real, it's fresh, it's in abundance and diversity. It's in season. So it's not always available, but they eat in season. And everybody looks like Michael Jordan, like, superstar athletes. And they don't train. They're not doing 80 squats a day, and so we have to debunk this myth around education, around food, around all of that. And having you on the show to share your stories, I believe is the way to do that, because you didn't arrive where you were overnight, even with a science background and nutrition background. It was a journey.
I made a lot of mistakes. I made a huge number of mistakes, and everyone out there is making mistakes.
Totally.
And no one, like you said, no one pill is going to solve everything. There's no one approach that's going to fit all, but a very, very small amount of, we call our program sometimes like the nutritional re-education that everyone needs, because no one has been really educated around food. We've just had a lot of pseudoscience kind of drummed into us, really. And I mean, we do a little bit, we do obviously a bit of work in the weight loss world, and I'll challenge you on whether or not it's something that you should have gone and done more of yourself, because it is such again, like there's a lot of big players in that space. And I think everyone's trying to do good work in that, but it's massive. What is it now? Like 3/4 of our society or of our population is headed towards weight-related disease or are already obese.
Already 75% in the US. Yeah, 75% in the US are overweight or obese.
Yeah. And I just don't think that a lot of those larger businesses out there, whilst they might work for some people, you take things like Noom and Weight Watchers. I think I mean, obviously they're multinational corporations, so there's going to be an issue with that for some people. But I just think the power of being able to talk to someone like yourself and have that person with them along the way to answer questions and help them debunk myths, and hey, my husband told me he read something, and wait a second, I think what you're saying here is wrong. It's like, okay, well, let's have a quick chat about it. And I think just the power of community and having smaller groups, or being part of a smaller group that's going to help you be accountable and have those conversations, and sometimes those tough conversations that you need to have in order to shift your behaviors. Because at the end of the day, we're talking nutrition and habits. So it's ours anyway is a two-pronged approach where we lay out the foundational principles of nutrition and plant-based nutrition. And it's not veganism, you're still allowed to eat some of the things you always love to eat. You just can't eat them all the time, but then the larger part of it really is the mindset training, and just being able to unpack and understand why you do the things you do. Why is it that you end up binging on that box of ice cream and the Tim Tams on a Thursday night? Not just a bowl of it, but the whole thing sometimes. And we all have our vices, totally. And so this is, this is the funny thing too. It's like the information that we have to pass on to these people, probably in your program too, or with what you do, it's out there. They can get it fairly cheap. Everyone kind of, whilst they try to look for evidence to back up the cognitive biases that they have around, oh, well, I really want to keep eating meat, so I'm going to try and find evidence to support that. It just comes down to the mindset training. That's the missing link. And it's really not very sexy. It's not very cool. It's just the work you have to do if you actually want to bring about change in your life. And we do a lot of positive neuroscience. There's lots of little processes and exercises you get to do to actually help you, put pen to paper or write some stuff down. Maybe for some people, for the very first time in their whole lives, they're like, wow. And we work with a lot of women who are like, I haven't focused on me for a whole week for 12 years, because they've got children running around. And so even just the act of writing, answering one really sort of powerful question will really start to move those cogs of change. And then the more and more and more you do of it, you end up with this like self-perpetuating snowball. Once you've kind of challenged yourself on something you thought you knew, for the very first time, it's undeniable from that point, So our program's really about staying away from advising people. We are all about working on the pretense that the answers to your problems. I'm not here to tell you how to think. I'm not here to tell you exactly how you should run your life, or you don't have to get up at 5 a.m. and do 20 sun salutations. If you love doing that and that speaks to you, go for it. So we create a structure essentially around which people can do their own work and arrive at their own answers. And that is the change that, as I'm sure in the neuroscience world and when it comes to engaging and changing behavior, that is how it becomes sustainable, because unfortunately, when it comes down to the mindset coaching side of things, we live in this environment where we are disempowered by all the advising. I've got a lot of people that I've worked with and friends especially who are like, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And what should I do about that? And it's like,
can I eat this? Can I eat this?
Yeah. It's like, well, okay, let's turn around and read it. And so really helping, it's all about taking people from that paradigm of disempowerment to empowerment, where they really do feel like they can solve some of their own problems and not need us anymore. Off you go. I don't want to see you anymore. Once you get them back on their own feet and you start to see, you can always kind of hear it in their voice too. You can tell that something has shifted in their subconscious processes because they have dug down into something that has resonated with them. And I'll never know what it is unless they tell me one day or want to share it with us. But that's when you hear that the tone in their voice, and just there's a light in their eye and a spark to their energy, and you can tell that there are some of those deeper cogs of change that are all covered in cobwebs, and they're all starting to get to start moving again. So that's a really beautiful part of the process, I think, working with people who are faced with change and are really struggling to make it happen.
And that's what creates the lasting change, I find, because a lot of programs that just focus on what you need to do, like here's your meal plan, just go out and buy these recipes, or like the ingredients for the recipes, and you just follow them. And it's why 99% of people who diet, they follow these really strict programs. Within 1 to 3 years, they gain all the weight back and more.
Exactly.
And it's because they haven't focused on the why set. Like, why do you want to even be healthy? Like, what do you want to do with this newfound health that you're going to get? What would you, how do you want to be in service to the world and to your family and yourself? And what would that mean? And so I think it's so important. And I mean, we're humans. I just watched 1883. I don't know if anybody out there has seen it. Really fantastic short series on TV, but it's based on 1883, the pioneers all moving from the Great Frontier all the way up and settling all of the Americas. And you see that in 120 years, we've gone from gun-slinging bandits and pioneers, pulling carriages by horse cart, no vehicles, no electricity, no running water, to where we are today, hosting podcasts and sending people to Mars and driving Teslas. And the amount of, we know 3% of the way the brain works in the field of neuroscience. And the field of neuroscience, my friends, is really only a few decades old, like as far as like how much we've learned. And so we've come so far, so fast. And I really do feel we're all discombobulated right now. And we need people who understand that to make these lifestyle behavior changes that are really necessary, that we have to start making these today, because we have, rapidly grown our society, but we are now on the decline when it comes to chronic diseases, mental health. They say 1 in 1 people by 2030 will have a mental health condition: depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and autism. And so this needs to change. And we need coaches like yourself that are willing to work with people, not just give them like, follow this plan and you're off to the races, and just buy another plan. We need that. And it's not hand holding, it's actually human connection.
Yeah, it's like partnering. We're partnering with that person. And I, every now and then I'll ask my client, hey, do you want me to give you a little advice here? But we set it all up at the beginning. It's a very advice-free program. Amazing. But people want that. They come in, and some of our earlier students were like, "Can you just give me a shopping list?" I mean, that's fairly logical. Okay, cool. Yeah. Here's a shopping list. But people want the how-to. Yeah. People want just give me the, make it easy somehow. And obviously that's a challenge to do that, because some of it is not easy. It can be very simple. Like you said, the solution is quite simple when you're very familiar with the whole landscape. But the whole process of, connecting with core values and sometimes digging into your stuff, things that you think you had solved, years ago that maybe you hadn't. And it's not that you need therapy or counseling, maybe it's just that you really have to understand what was the positive intention of that thing happening in your life. What did you learn? And having those really powerful conversations so people can actually really understand that they are the expert. They do have, and there are how-tos everywhere. Yeah. And if how-tos worked, then we wouldn't have the problems that we have. Exactly. But we are disempowered by, all you got to do is scroll on Instagram for 15 minutes and type in like weight loss story or something, and you've got everyone out there who's just trying to get a click. They're just trying to get a like. They're just trying to maybe boost their own business and put a meal on the table for their family. But they're all selling the same disempowering messages.
Yeah.
You know, look at me, this is how I did it, and I've got this
Yeah.
brand, and blah 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 blah. And you know,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's a massive machine out there that we're all tangled up in. And I think in a way, like helping people understand that there is a way out. It's not rocket science.
Nope.
You know,
Nope.
and yeah. And it's just about really committing to, like we just said, like you said before at the start of this podcast, is taking ownership of the situation yourself, and really, and trying something new as well. Like if eating a heap of meat and cutting carbs out of your diet, and you know, taking shakes and smoothies and doing all that crap, if it really worked, you know, there wouldn't be so many people in the situation that they are. Yeah.
Now, I'm glad that you gave us some insight into how you work with your clients, because that's really hard. That's really helpful. It's super important for people to understand that they need the how-to, they need to understand the why, they need somebody who's going to support them through that. And just like, Andre Agassi didn't become a famous tennis coach or tennis player just simply by learning how to, hit a ball over the net. Like, it took a coach to work beside him and work through mindset and work through, you can tell how old I am by the fact that I'm referencing Andre Agassi, but
I know who that is.
Okay, good, perfect. I'm sure there's some people out there who are going to be like, you could have referenced, a few other people who are a little bit more current right now. But no, like no athlete works without a coach, and without being. So it's important to understand that that's probably who you want to look for, unless you're that type of personality who's just willing to like put all other emotions aside and then just get to the plan and stick to it. But sticking to it long term, we often need to understand a little bit more about ourselves.
Yeah, it's the exception, not the rule. Like we find that there are some people who are just like, right, okay, I need to change. I'm just going to go and do it and change. And usually those people turn around to us 6 months down the line and they'll say, you know what, I thought I didn't need all that mindset crap, but it was the work that I did there that kept me going when I wanted to go back to some of my old habits, which happens to everyone. It doesn't matter how strong, you think you are. But I think in a way, a lot of people don't understand the notion of coaching. It's always attached to the landscape of sports coaching. I mean, people are pretty, I think, cognizant of it in a professional
business coaching,
and we say to people, like, if you had a big job opportunity opening up in your division or in your workplace, what would you do to get that job? Well, you're probably going to connect with a mentor or a coach or someone who's going to help you dial in that resume. You're going to do interview practice. There's a whole process you're probably going to go through, and why? Because it's really important. Getting that job is really important. It's important for your family. It's important for you. However, when people come to us with these chronic health problems and we'll say, hey, have you ever connected with anyone before to help you through this? They're like, oh, no, I've done Noom and I bought a book. It's still sitting on my bedside table, but and I've been reading diet media. Like, I scroll all the time. I get Google notifications all the time about, and it's like, wow.
I like a lot of recipes. I like a lot of recipes on Instagram, but I don't actually make them.
I'm following an influencer on Instagram who looks fantastic, and she makes in yoga pants, and she makes some really great looking meals and whatever. But and I guess it's just that it's just people can't. Some people struggle to look at where they are now and just that lighting up that prefrontal cortex and helping them understand where things are going to go to in the future, that future focused thinking. So they're unable to make that connection. But, this is something that will become a problem in their lives in 10, 15 years, and the problem won't be fixable, in that time. So that's quite often a bit of a light bulb moment where I think a lot of people aren't there where they're like, oh, I actually need to really sort this out now, and like, let's not even start talking about cholesterol, because that all feeds into, what's the name of the doctor who's pushing that meat only diet?
Oh, I've heard about him. And well, I mean, then there's so many doctors
Yeah.
out there that are like that.
Yeah.
And this is again, like I don't want to say it's conspiracy, I don't want to say anything, but it's a person who truly believes in what they're teaching. And so then they're out
Mhm.
there pushing these things, or like the don't eat nightshades and don't eat, there's like all of these people. And at the end of the day, we're human. We have the ability to eat this broad diversity of beautiful phyto-rich
Mhm.
nutrient foods, and it is really simple, actually. We don't have
Yeah.
to complicate it with all of these, meat only or this only or that
Uh,
only. And I would say that should be a red flag for anybody who's saying like that it's just this one, food group, as
yeah.
opposed to the diversity and the plethora of foods that are available to us
Mhm.
everywhere. Most of them that we mow over just so we can have green grass, but that stuff
Yeah.
is edible too, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so it is, yeah, it is challenging.
Mm.
As Rich Roll always likes to say, land the plane. I got to come up with
Mhm.
one of those things to wrap up the show. I
Yeah.
have to go catch a ferry. I want to get your podcast edited and out there to the world. So
Mhm.
tell us where people can reach you and how they can start working with you.
Sure. So probably the best place would be to jump on Facebook. We have a business page there, Tuvita Health and Leadership Coaching. We're also online, tuvitacoaching.com, and we've got a little Instagram handle there as well, Tuvita Health, and we can give you a little link to all those things in
I'll have
the
them in the
show
show
notes for
notes.
sure. Yeah, yeah. And if anyone is interested to see a little bit more of the inner workings, I guess, of our program and how we address things, we have a free webinar for people to watch that is available on our website. And we've also got a private group where you can jump in and have a look and see if it's a good fit for you, really. Because at the end of the day, everyone needs help, everyone needs
Yeah.
support, everyone needs someone to guide, to partner with. And I always say to people, it mightn't be me.
Yeah.
Just go find someone
Exactly.
who has done this before, who is either experienced success themselves or with other people, has a system that they can replicate results
Yeah.
with. Go and find that person and go and work with them,
Yeah.
because this is your health, and it's the amount of money you're about to spend on tests and surgeries and stents
Yeah.
and, medications is going to trump any amount of money that you might spend working with a professional who truly knows how to get you there. So
Yeah.
that's
That's
pretty
really
much
well said. And I think the important point I want to highlight there is when you're working with anybody, you want to
it.
make sure that they have gotten other people similar results. They've been able to help that person get results. And so that's where you just have to be discerning. And it's just taking the time to ask the question, who have you worked with before? What were their results? Did they get them really strictly through your program? Or, I see a lot of things on Instagram where everybody likes to use acronyms or abbreviations, and
Mhm.
they'll say, oh, I got this way from working out in the gym this many days a week, but then you look, and if you actually dig in a bit further, you're like, oh, but you had reconstructive bowel surgery and stomach
Yes.
surgery to lose that weight. So
Yeah.
you're not getting the actual full story. So it's
Mhm.
really important, just like you shared your story, about trying all of these things. And
Mhm.
we don't know, was it just the diet or was it the
Mhm.
microabrasion? And it's good to know the whole story, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's a combination of a few things. The end
Mhm.
result, though, is that we want to get the result. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
be discerning.
also too, like on that, there's a lot of people trying, working in that health coaching space. And I'm not going to, um, make a judgment on the validity of someone's program until I've seen it the whole way through.
Yeah,
But there are a lot of people out there as well who are just pushing products, and
100%.
there's multi-level marketing programs out there that are being sold by a person who's saying they're a health coach, but then when you connect with them, you learn that they're actually part of, I'm not going to say any labels or
Yeah,
brands or anything, but they're actually just selling you a bunch of meal replacements and pills and potions
totally.
and powders, and that is not going to do anything in
No,
the long run. It's been proven by science. So,
yeah.
unfortunately, that is the landscape when it comes to the client, the guest out there looking for someone to work with. So being aware
Yeah.
of those things is really, really important.
Yeah, no, that's really important to know, because
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have teenage girls and they come to me all the time with things that they saw on TikTok and they're like, I could just drink lemon juice and maple syrup. And I'm like, no, it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. So yes. Yeah, you said that very well. It's really important for people to look into it and know that there's going to be a little bit of work, but with the right person behind you, it could be actually be fun. It doesn't have to be work.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes. We
Yeah.
focus a lot on fun. Definitely. I like to keep it real.
Yeah. No, which is so
Yeah. And
important. So important.
also too, like I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
There's things I'm still working on with my health. I am it's not as though I think sometimes people feel a little bit intimidated by working with someone because they're like, oh, she's going to be all perfect. And,
Mhm.
and it's going to make me feel like shit because that's what, I remember that.
Totally.
And yeah, like we're all, no one is doing diet and lifestyle 100% correct, and no
Not
one
at
ever
all.
will, right? But we need more people to be doing it incorrectly,
Yeah.
than what we have right now. Just get in and have a go and start doing
Yeah.
something until you find that thing that's going to work for you.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, really well said. Yeah, no, everyone knows on this podcast, I'm like, salt and vinegar chips are my vice. And
Miss Vicky's.
yes, I know. It's like, why? And I have my own work to
Not
do
that
around
bad.
that,
Oh,
and so yeah, nobody's perfect, but at the end of the day, I love it how you said it at the beginning, like, if you want anything out of this podcast, just please go out there and get a diversity of vegetables and fruits and legumes
yeah.
and whole beans in your diet. Like, please just do that.
Yes.
If you missed everything else about this show, then
Yeah.
just start with that place. And then of
Absolutely.
course, go out there and find a beautiful coach to work with like yourself at
Yeah.
Tuvita Health Coaching. We'll have all the links in the show notes so that you will be able to find Demelza Clay out there in the world in beautiful Okanagan, BC. So thank you, Demelza, for being here on
Thank you.
our
Yes.
show. Welcome back. And as promised, wasn't that an incredible show with Demelza Clay? And just to let you know, at the time of the recording, Demelza was a full-time health coach, but now she has gone back to coaching, ski coaching. And so if people want to get in touch with her, though, she has offered to give people free access to her coaching services, her online course and online coaching for big picture skiing. So please get in touch with her through the links below and you can get the support that you need through Demelza that way. Now, if anybody was listening to this episode and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I would love to be a health coach like myself or Demelza or, anybody else that that is actually getting results for people, then I encourage you to book a call with us and sign up for our nutrition and detox coaching certification program. We teach you the full science of reversing chronic diseases. It takes 3 months. We've trained physicians, naturopaths, lawyers, other health practitioners, stay-at-home moms, dads who homeschool their kids. We've been training all individuals from all different backgrounds, all across North America, Vietnam, Malaysia. We have students everywhere, and we would love for you to become one of our nutrition and detox coaches because there are 222 million people across North America that are battling a chronic disease that is fully reversible. And right now in North America, we spend about $3.9 trillion managing and treating easy to reverse chronic diseases. Imagine what we could do as a continent with $3.9 trillion. That actually represents 90% of our healthcare spending. So we need to band together to be able to support 22 million people. That's all we need to help 22 million people in reversing their chronic diseases. Because I am here to tell you, when you help someone reverse a chronic disease, they automatically inspire other people to turn to food as medicine to reverse their chronic diseases. And they inspire 10 more people, family members, colleagues, friends, relatives. And when we do this, this is how we are going to crush the chronic disease epidemic. So if you are looking for a new career where you can help people reverse their chronic diseases and at the same time make a healthy living doing so, then please reach out to us at the link below and you can book a call to become a nutrition and detox coach. We'll answer all your questions and you can join our amazing cohort of students that have graduated and are in the program now. We would love to see you become our next N&D coach. Thanks everyone for listening to this podcast and stay tuned for the next episode. Have an amazing day.